But it was once they ate from the tree, now they know that they're naked and they know that it's bad. But God knew that it was bad. So was he just like perving out the whole time? He's like, I'm not going to tell them that they're naked. Just kind of.
When in disgrace, with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself, and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art, and that man's scope, with what I most enjoyed contented least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered, such wealth brings. I scorn to change my state with kings. William Shakespeare's Sonnet 29, a piece of poetry that I enjoy very much, although I've been accused in the past of not enjoying poetry. I like poetry, just when it's good and able to be consumed by a person with my linguistic understanding. Welcome to The Honest Apostates. My name is Tracy Wilbert. I'm here with Eli Slack, and today we're starting on Genesis 3. Something I wanted to address before we move on is some complaints we've gotten in comments. A particular one was, these guys just read, they don't research. First of all, I would really like to find some method of researching the Bible that isn't reading. But secondly, if you have an issue with us reading the King James Version of the Bible, 1611 by the by, then just give us the right translation.
Yeah,
if this isn't the right one, get together with all of the Christians, all of them, and all agree on one translation. We'll use that one. Until then, this is the one I hear people hooting and hollering about the most. So that's the one I'm going to use. Now, you can say that's an argumentum ad populum, but I'm not saying it's the best. I'm just saying it's the one I'm going to use to quiet down the most people.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's not that we're saying, well, this one is the right one because it's the most popular. We're saying this one is the most popular because it's the most popular.
Yeah.
So fair enough.
If you can give us the right one, I'd love to use that one. If it's better than this one so far hasn't been very great. But anyhow, Genesis chapter 3. Now, this is where we finally get into actual storyline rather than just a whole bunch of setup.
Mm-hmm. We had origin stories. We had plot building, world building. And now, now we get into the plot. Mm-hmm. This is where the serpent comes in. And the serpent was the most subtle. Was more subtle than any beast. And I want to say too, it seems like it was really easy to trick Eve because
it's not even a trick.
No, it really isn't.
It was just a temptation. Mm-hmm. Is the story anyhow, and I think that flows through the story that I'm reading here. It was a temptation.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is interesting because it shows a real lack of foresight on the behalf of this God character to create a being with the capability for temptation at all is interesting. An interesting choice there. You don't want them to be. You created a being that is capable of doing things you don't want them to be doing. It seems a bit odd, as though I were to create a machine that stabs me in the arm. Why'd I do that? That's dumb. I don't want to be stabbed in the arm.
Well, then why'd you make a machine for it? It's all part of your plan, Tracy.
Well, the argument is often made that, God doesn't make robots. He makes these free agents, I suppose.
He gives us free will.
Yeah, free will, whatever that is. I've heard it defined most commonly outside of Calvinists to be the capability to do otherwise. I suppose. I guess she also had the ability to not be tempted, but I don't see how the being tempted is within her control. Anyhow,
Yeah. Well, and it's worth noting, and I don't know. I think this is the like prevailing view, but one of the comments we got, like you mentioned, is that God knew, because this was on our short talking about the finite resources on Earth. God did know that the resources were finite, but it didn't matter because he knew that we were going to sin. He knew there was going to be death. He knew people were going to die. He knew that we wouldn't run out of space and resources because he knew that we would never reach that we wouldn't have infinity on Earth. So that sounds to me like a setup. Like he puts the only two people that exist in the same place as the tree that he doesn't want them to eat from. If the trees are there for us to eat from and they're not supposed to eat from this tree, what's the purpose of this tree?
it is a setup. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's a setup from start to finish. Given the attribute set of this God, of his omniscience or his maximally knowledgeableness, however you want to put it, alleged, the characteristics of this God, as it's been described to me. If you know, even if we don't give him perfect omniscience to play with this free will aspect, if you have two agents in a set of circumstances and there is an outcome you don't want, you just make it not possible for them to do that. That doesn't stop them from the will of wanting to rebel. Just put like put a dome. He's clearly able to make domes. Put a dome over the tree.
Yeah.
And so, then once they touch the dome, well, that was the thing.
Yeah. You did the thing, man.
And it doesn't even have to be a dome. It could be just like a little shimmer, and of just around the tree, just a hair's breadth around the tree.
Here's, I think, a better safeguard.
What's up? Not making the tree at all?
Don't make the fucking tree.
Well, see, I'm trying to buy into it. I'm trying to buy into the story and say, like, you need the temptation because, we talk about this all the time. It becomes an all things considered good. If it is the God's plan and God's plan is good that this happens, then even though they've done a bad thing, all things considered, they were supposed to do that bad thing so that a good thing could happen.
They did the right thing. They did the only thing that they were ever going to do.
The issue I run into is that stopping somebody from doing a thing does not interfere with their free will if free will exists as a concept. And this character God, we'll get into later, knows our hearts and our intentions and what have you. So he knows what you intend to do. He knows the future to a certain extent. That extent, I don't think if this creature is real, I don't think we'd be capable of grasping the extent to it. But he knows the future to some extent due to his production of prophecy and production of predictions. So clearly he is capable of seeing into the future to some extent. The problem I run into is that all you got to do, if we're already in the realm of thought crime, which this God is, all he's got to do is in like the instant before the eating of the apple, just stop Eve and say, nope, you were bad. And
you fucked up.
You fucked up. And then just be like, there you go. She's not a robot. She's still a free agent. There just exists an actual, I guess, peacekeeping force.
Yeah, like a bumper.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, like the God police.
The police are not stopping the free will of criminals.
Yeah.
Of who they stop before it happens.
Yeah.
They just...
Well, in Minority Report, they are.
They aren't.
We don't live in Minority Report.
They are not interfering with the free will. I guess I've never seen Minority Report, so I can't speak on that. I guess I had a certain vision in my head of how Minority Report is, and that may not be accurate. So let me
They
recant that previous statement.
they have precogs that can
I
precognate.
understand, but I need to
Yeah.
watch the movie to get the entire
enough.
context. You won't be able to explain it all to me so that I have
No.
the
You're like,
explanation
no,
you
no,
give
no.
me will inevitably lead me to your conclusion.
That's true. I
So
will give you.
I need to go
I will
look at it.
imprint my bias upon that
Yeah.
explanation. That's true.
But anyway, let's get more into the book because we've walked around.
We have detoured, and we've both heard before too from J Mike over at the ACA that like if God is capable of what does he say, instantiating any logically possible universe, and it is logically possible that everybody can always freely choose to do the good thing, then it would be possible for God to instantiate a universe in which every person freely chooses to do the good thing. They still have free will and they still do the good things. That is a logically possible universe, and God chose not to instantiate that universe. Or God doesn't exist to instantiate that universe. Or God cannot instantiate that universe.
Or he chose not to instantiate that universe for purposes that we can't plumb. It's the problem of the it's this other problem that I run into of the ineffable plan, where the plan is ineffable to our minds. We cannot comprehend it.
Can't have it.
And yet we are supposed to say that it is good. If I cannot comprehend it, I can't comprehend that it is good.
Yeah.
That's just an assertion. It's a bald-faced assertion in light of saying, I can't understand this, but it is good.
Yeah.
It's just an assertion.
The idea of both there is a perfect inerrant plan that we can't deviate from, and God knows exactly what's going to happen, but also you have the freedom to choose what you're going to do. Those two things cannot exist at the same time. If there is a plan and I have no choice but to follow it, I don't have a choice. If God knew what was going to happen, if that was all a part of God's plan, then Adam and Eve never had a choice but to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and never had a choice but to bring sin and death into the world, which means we never had a choice but to die and to require Christ's sacrifice and Christ's forgiveness in order to not go to hell. And if that's the case, then God is a fucking monster.
And I would say, to build off of that, it is a contradiction of terms to say that God planned for a thing and that God's plan will happen, and also that you could have done otherwise. Just to sum all what you've just set up, is that is that is a true contradiction. P and not P. This thing will happen, but also it cannot happen.
It could not happen.
Yes, that is the proposition and its negation entailed by this set of circumstances.
The only way God's plan wouldn't come to fruition is if it is God's plan for God's plan not to come to fruition, but then it would come to fruition.
And it would then again be a contradiction of terms. I'd like to step away from the meta. We've been walking in the metaverse.
We have.
Pretty heavy.
I think we beat that pretty much.
And
I'd
like to get back to the book.
Yeah.
The serpent was more subtle than any beast. Yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. The woman said, we can eat of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit. There's some editorializing coming up right here, and I think it's I can attribute that to Eve just misremembering. Which, okay, I guess we've got imperfect memory before the fall of the world. So possibly, I'm inferring that, but I think it is what it is. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God had said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And what he actually says is, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. It doesn't say anywhere she can't just touch it. Unless, it also she cut out the part of in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely. So there's either some editorializing or possibly some some flaw of memory. If I'm to take this as an actual account of the past, I think the more likely option is something that you brought up before, which was that this wasn't meant to be interpreted as a literal accounting of the past. So you can get flowery with shit if you're not actually trying to be accurate. You can get flowery and just drop words here and throw things around over here.
And it could be both a combination of that, and so it could be like, let's say, for example, if this was written, if the Torah was written by Moses, as it claims to have been, as part of it claims that part of it was, then this is just an error. This is a mistake, or it's poetry. One of the other, I think, stronger hypotheses is that the Old Testament had many different authors. And as such, they would have different versions of the story, or not necessarily that different authors would have different versions, but having different versions and different details does point to, it is one thing that does point to multiple authors. So that's just kind of, that's what it seems like to me. Okay, this person, when this person who wrote this particular version of this story heard this story, then God told them, no, you can't touch it, don't eat it, don't touch it. Like, but like it's just different people hearing different versions.
And the serpent goes on to say, "Nah, you're not going to die." I'm paraphrasing because I don't want to speak like this. It's clunky and it's not fun. Nah, you're not going to die. Instead, what's going to happen, and God knows this is going to happen, your eyes will be opened to the truths that God sees,
Ego death,
of good
man,
and of evil. Which just harkens back to the things that we saw before, that apparently being naked was an evil, and God just wasn't telling them. Who knows what evil shit they were up to in the garden?
Yeah, they could have been like wearing mixed fabrics. They could have been working on a Sabbath. They could have been
ate shellfish. No, they couldn't have eaten shellfish. They were only eating plants. They were only eating plants back then.
They were only eating plants.
Then they wouldn't have been wearing anything, actually, Eli. So there you go.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
The being naked would have been an evil thing that they didn't know about, but they were doing.
And they weren't punished for it.
And they weren't punished for that, which was weird. So outside of the knowledge, you can't be punished. Before she ate the fruit was when she bought it, was when she decided to eat the fruit. You can't decide to eat the fruit after you eat the fruit. So it goes on, she is then punished for doing a thing retroactively before
she could have known better.
She could have known better. She was told not to, but she didn't know that not listening to God was wrong.
Yep.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah. If you define, which some people do, if you define evil as removed from God, right? So not listening to God, I think you could shoehorn into that category. And if you don't know what evil is, how are you going to know? It's just, it can't. I mean,
and I think it destroys the entire idea that God doesn't make robots. God made something that wasn't a robot and then seemingly wanted it to behave like a robot.
Hey, why aren't you a robot? Well, 'cause you didn't make me one.
Because he wanted this unquestioned authority, which is a thing that you would have over a robot, this unquestioned authority. And yet he didn't imbue that.
Maybe he's in one of those universes where like you create like an AI, like a simulation, and then it gains consciousness, and you're like, well, fuck, now what do? I can't turn it off. That's murder. So he just had to let it ride out.
Well, he goes on to murder people later. Well, not murder, but kill. But I guess you could say that it is justified. I'm like, all right, then it's just slaughter. Then he's just slaughtering people.
I would be slaughter. Slaughter is for sure.
But let's go on here. And then the woman saw, which she's never. I don't think we've even gotten to the point where she was named Eve.
I don't think it has said that yet. Okay. No, it says that in Gen 2. I'll find it if you want to continue.
Well, you find it. I'm going to keep going. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. Did Adam know?
See that I wonder is the way it has always been told was that Eve deceived Adam. So that might be where it comes from, because Eve ate from the tree and then she knew good and evil. And then she told Adam to eat from the tree. So she knew then that it was evil to disobey God. And then she told Adam to do it.
Eve would influence her husband to do. Yeah, it says here in the study Bible, the devil did not need to tempt Adam directly, for Eve would influence. I don't know where you're getting it. This woman isn't named Eve yet.
The devil didn't tempt anybody.
It's referenced later in Revelations where they're coming from. The serpent, whatever.
Okay.
Adam took the fruit knowingly in deliberate rebellion, which is then referenced in 1 Timothy 2:14, which I guess I can look up and check that. But I don't
How
see
did Adam deliberately
I don't
rebel?
see how a post hoc rationalization of a thing adds to its credibility.
No, I don't think so.
In 1 Timothy 2:14, you say some things. We'll look at 1 Timothy.
Yeah, so I don't think that my new insight on the story, I agree. I don't think it adds any credibility, but it just makes it a little bit less nonsensical. Not completely sensical, but a little bit less nonsensical. What now doesn't make sense to me is, how did Adam knowingly rebel?
Yeah,
that doesn't
I'm going to
track.
Or
is that what you're looking up?
Yeah, that's because they put a citation in. So I'm gonna 1 Timothy 2:14. Yeah, it doesn't. It says, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression.
Adam was deceived. If
we can't even say that. We can't even say that Adam was deceived.
No, we can't. Yeah, actually,
all we can say is that he got a fruit and ate it.
Yeah, he got it from her.
Yeah. We don't know what she told him.
See. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were. Let me see what the original Hebrew says.
They put a thing here. Adam took the fruit knowingly in deliberate rebellion, and then they put a citation, 1 Timothy 2:14, and look at 1 Timothy 2:14, and Adam was not deceived, which is being spoken by a person who didn't know Adam. And it just seems that what they're referring to here is this person's interpretation of the scripture rather than any.
First
it's
Timothy.
A post hoc rationalization is all it is.
That's what that is. That individuals in the 1st century, 2nd century AD.
Whenever 1 Timothy was written, which it's in the New Testament, so it would be in the AD times.
The 2nd century. Is that what I said?
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's what I said. Because the earliest books of the New Testament were 70 or so AD. And then the later ones, the later Gospels, came in the hundreds. Yeah. So as I understand it, I believe 2 Timothy would have been written around probably the 2nd century. So I don't know specifically, though.
But let me try and give it its fair shake and look at their little jotting, see if they have any notes about it. And they don't. They have notes about 2:12 and 2:15, but they don't elaborate. I guess you're just expected. This is Paul. This is Paul speaking here, apparently.
Okay.
So that's Paul. I don't even know if that's Paul née Saul. It was Paul née Saul. It was the guy who used to be Saul and was all like, I hate those Christians, and then he had a hallucination and decided to like Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hebrew word for Hebrew word. Okay. It says essentially the exact same thing. The first is, so when she saw, I'm not going to try to pronounce the Hebrew word, so I'm going to get it wrong and embarrass myself, and there's no reason to insult that language like that. So when she saw the woman, that was good, the tree for food, and that pleasant it was to the eyes, and desirable, a tree to make wise. Then she took of its fruit and ate, and she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate.
I
So
think that after I've read this a few times and after what you've just told me, I think that we can maybe infer that Adam was there when she went to the tree.
like they were just kind of hanging out together, and the serpent was like, he just addressed her. I don't know why.
Well, I guess I was just talking about when they go to the tree.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because it says here, she has this discussion with the serpent, and then it says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good, which to me means that she wasn't at the tree when having the discussion with the serpent. I think that's a reasonable interpretation. She wasn't at the tree when having the discussion with the serpent. And then
that's how I've imagined it.
And then they go on to say, all right, well, then she goes and gets her husband and goes to the tree. That doesn't say that she has deceived him in any way. That all that says is, hey, let's go eat from this tree. And he doesn't know that it's bad to eat from the tree. All he knows is that God said not to do it. But he doesn't know that not listening to God is a bad thing. So he's like, all right, I'm open to suggestion because I don't know the difference between good and evil. Just as apparently Eve is open to suggestion.
Well, Adam did narc on Eve basically right away, who he still hasn't named. I was mistaken. The KJV does not name Eve.
Well, let's go on then. The fruit, blah, 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 blah. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew they were naked, so they made some clothes out of fig leaves, aprons. Apparently, I don't think that's probably not. Probably the word is not specifically aprons. It's probably garments of some kind, but I'll just say aprons and know in my mind that it's probably not an apron. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And they hid themselves. And the Lord God said, "Where art thou?" Which sounds, if we're to take all of if we're to take the professed attribute set, this is either nonsense or God being cheeky. There's those seem to be the only two rational. Like, it's like when you have a son. If when your son was younger and you would play hide and seek, did he ever hide somewhere obvious and you just go, now where is my boy?
That happens.
Pretty classic dad shit right there.
Pretty much like 3 times a month, where somebody will walk into the house and he'll hide behind a half wall, but like poke his eyes out, but he has like tall curly hair, so you can see his hair and he doesn't realize it. So we'll just stand there and go, where is he? That's this.
So it's either cheekiness or just nonsense, but we'll go on. And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden. I think this is Adam speaking here. And I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. And he said, now referring to God, who told you that you were naked? And I was like, well, I mean, all of the words that he has comprehension of would have come from you. So unless the tree also gives you the knowledge of good and evil and also the word naked.
Yeah. Good and evil and nudity.
Yeah, there you go. And also, just knowing the word naked and what it means. In previous passages, I have asserted that anything that I have given the concession, rather, that anything that he says is knowledge bestowed on him by God, because he didn't. If we're doing magic, then God can give him magical knowledge. It's fine. So who told you? You did. Yeah. All of the knowledge that's here is from you.
Part of that, and I thought about something that I said similar to that in Genesis 1, that basically like Adam had to figure out what all these words mean. And I will grant, like you, that the conversation, it wasn't like Adam didn't understand language, but more like these concepts of death and nudity and modesty, I think. And what this is trying to imply here is that being naked is bad. Like we talked about at the beginning, they were already doing something bad by being naked, but it was once they ate from the tree, now they know that they're naked and they know that it's bad. But God knew that it was bad. So was he just like perving out the whole time? He's like, I'm not going to tell them that they're naked. Just kind of, or was it literally just like, because you don't know that it's wrong, it's not wrong? Sin is just this silly thing.
The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. So
You've
she
been
just passed
beguiled.
something you and I are going to talk about. And I called him Timothy because he is the worst person imaginable.
It would be the same as someone claiming that shit, I don't know. I'm going to abandon that thought. I have a different one.